Hello.
Hi. Happy Thursday.
Thank you. Yay. Happy Thursday to you. Thriving Thursday. Love
I
it.
like it.
Amazing.
Are we thriving?
I feel like I'm thriving. Are you thriving?
I think so.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
mind hasn't been made up yet today, but I think now that I'm here, it is.
Now that we're here. Amazing. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Kristen. I go by Kiki normally, and this is the Health Spot where we come every Thursday at noon PST. We talk about leadership and health. We combine the two. Um, I am the owner and operator of Thrive Mind Collaborative and a leadership coach. Ariel, you want to give us a quick introduction?
Sure. I'm a health coach and I help female leaders, women, mothers prioritize themselves and take care of their bodies, listen to their bodies, fuel their bodies the right way, the healthy way. Uh, and I do that through nutrition and fitness and lifestyle behavior coaching. So
Amazing.
that's me.
Amazing. Well, let's get started with an engagement question for everyone. And I want to know what yours is as well. What is a win that you've had over the past week?
You want to go first?
Oh gosh, sure. My win. I think my win from this past week, I got back from a beautiful trip to Alaska last week. It has been 1 week since we've gotten home, and I feel like I've gotten back into the swing of things. I did things a little bit differently this time. Typically, I like to work on vacation, and I don't do a very good job of disconnecting. And this time I did. I also did some prep work that allowed me to come back and not be so stressed out with like catch up. Which has been working. I actually feel like I've had these moments of what am I missing, which feels really good. It's like I have kind of my come back to work plan outlined. So that's my win for the week.
I love it. And I'm glad you got to unplug
Yeah,
officially.
me too. Yeah.
Um, I guess I'll talk about a client win because client wins always make me feel good.
Yeah.
Uh, did another round of assessments with a current client, and she's lost over 12 inches over her entire body in a
Whoa.
period of like 7, 8 weeks.
It's incredible.
So I love seeing transformations like that happen, mainly because I like seeing the joy on their face,
Yeah.
especially when there's times throughout that period where they're like questioning, I don't know if anything's happening or the scale isn't going down. And it's one of the reasons why I do measurements with people is because I want them to see the actual change that's happening, even though it might not be reflected on the scale. So, because for those that know me, I'm very anti-scale. So, uh, being able to measure progress in a different way and see those results and to have clients be happy with that, I mean, what's better?
Oh, it's the best. It's why we do what we do, right? Like I love those moments. I love how you said that, like seeing the joy on someone's face when they reach a goal or when they see their own growth. That makes it all worth it. It's so inspiring, I think, when we see our clients kind of moving towards their goals and feeling proud of their accomplishments. I love that.
Yeah.
Amazing. All right. Well, let's see. Last session, we talked about social connection. We talked about the importance of social connection. We talked about how to get social connection when you might be needing social connection and how to identify that. The takeaway from our last session was that by prioritizing intentional connection, we cultivate energy and well being. And I really feel this on the heels of coming back from my vacation and taking so much time with family. And even coming back, I've had a couple moments of very intentional social connection, and it just fills my soul in a different way. it does really cultivate energy, cultivates well-being, it just helps me feel inspired, I guess. Um, so that's what we talked about last time. Today, we are talking about modeling. So, mainly in kind of the leadership context, but I think it spans across all areas of our lives when we're showing up the way that we want to show up, when we're modeling the type of behavior we want to see, whether it's as a parent or as a leader. Um, it's so beneficial for those around us and can cultivate alignment, can cultivate the environment or the culture that you want to create. And so I guess we'll start there. I'll start with kind of the what is modeling. Um, and I'm going to look over at my notes here. Modeling in the context of leadership refers to a leader's practice of embodying the behaviors, the values, and the attitudes that they wish to see in their team or in their organization. It involves leading by example, demonstrating the desired traits to inspire and guide others to adopt them as well. And I think I'll just start out with modeling in terms of vacation. This comes up quite a bit with my clients where it's they'll say, yeah, I'm going on vacation. Oh, but I'm taking my laptop. I'm going to be available while I'm away. And I'll ask the question, how are you going to disconnect? And it's like, oh, well, I can't disconnect because I'm a VP, or I can't disconnect because I'm a C-level leader. I just can't do that. And it's always surprising to me when I reframe it and I share, what is this showing your team? And a lot of these people also have concerns about their team not taking time off or not taking space away from work. We know all of the benefits, but when we're in an organization and the people above us are authority figures or maybe people in roles that we want to move up to eventually, when they are modeling that, no, you can't actually disconnect on vacation, that's what they're going to get when their team takes vacations. Even if they say, hey, don't do as I do as I say, it doesn't work that way. And I don't think I really fully understood that until I had kids.
Mhm.
Now I really get it. And so I just feel like it's such an important topic because it's so easy to say, okay, this is how I want you to show up, whether it's at work or in the home, whatever it is. But then when you're not showing up in that way, it's setting a different example. It's setting a precedent that maybe isn't the best precedent. It's not something that's actually going to benefit the unit, whether it's your family unit, your team, your organization. So that's where we're starting today. And
I think
talking
it's an important topic
about,
because it's so easy to get caught up in like all you do is work, right? I mean, I work with a ton of those people where it's like, I don't have time to take care of myself. Well, okay, that could be a conversation ender right there. Or I could dig a little deeper and say, why, and get to kind of the bottom of what it is. And oftentimes it's guilt, like feeling like they should be doing more all the time. I never get enough stuff done. And sometimes it does come up, where their superior, their boss has these expectations. And it's like, well, I don't know how my boss does it, but he or she is doing X, Y, and Z. And I can't take time for myself. And so dissecting that for them becomes really important.
yeah,
Um, Otherwise you can't, you're stuck, right?
right,
So, for you leaders out there, uh, yeah, I think it's really important for you to drive home the idea that you want your teams to be rejuvenated and take care of themselves because then they're gonna uh, work better
yeah,
and be more productive and you know hopefully you're able to do those things too, and if not, call me.
yeah, exactly, exactly. I think that it's also, in addition to kind of showing that example, I think there's also influence and inspiration that can come with modeling a certain way of working or a certain way of disconnecting. Um, it doesn't always, I'll use myself as an example. When I went to, as an entrepreneur, right? Like I don't have a team of people. I mean, I have a very small team. And so being present in certain situations was required. Um, but being able to plan that so that I didn't open up my laptop, do the one thing I needed to do, and then get caught up for a few hours of work. I could have very easily, but I think it does come back to the plan and how you, I mean, I feel like you do this in your work as well, right? Like when I'm thinking about how I'm going to fit in my workouts for the week, I make a plan. And then do I always stick to it 100%? No, there is some flexibility there, but knowing that you have a plan in place and knowing why you have that plan in place. And I think for me, it was always a lot easier to adhere to that plan of disconnecting and not really working during my entire vacation and being able to actually have that space away from work. I know the benefits of it. But as a recovering workaholic, I think one thing that I really relied on was the fact that I'm influencing and inspiring my team. If I want them to come to work focused and innovative and creative and their best selves, they have to be able to take time away as well. And I think that that also goes towards like the hours that we work, right? Like, I think when I was working in a corporate environment and I had kids, it was really easy for me to work late into the evenings because I had to leave early to go pick up my kids. And so I was making up the time. But I wasn't actually communicating that to my team. So what my team saw was that I was on at all hours of the day. I was on early mornings before I took my kids to school. I was on in the late evenings. I was on the weekends. And so it created this precedence that they needed to be on during those times as well. And I think even just having that clear communication of, hey, my schedule's a little wonky. I have kid drop off and kid pickup, right? And so you may see me here doing some emails early morning or in the evenings. That is not an expectation of you. And if you have a 2 hour appointment in the middle of the day and you have to work a little bit later, just communicate. Hey, I'm going to be on a little bit later today. I have an appointment, so I'm taking off this time. And so it really came down to communication because there are those moments where, yeah, you're going to be on vacation and you're going to work a little bit, but talk about it, communicate how you are, why you are working, how you are still structuring your time to ensure that you have time to disconnect. And I think it also just comes back to being able to model. I mean, this goes for communication, it goes for taking a vacation, it goes for anything. How do you want your team to communicate? How do you want your team to resolve conflict? Um, all of these different areas, if you can think about how you want your team to perform, it gives you a roadmap for how to actually approach those situations as well, and then inspires your team to do the same.
Well, I like hearing you talk about that. And I'll tell you why, just because my experience, I can honestly say I've never had a good boss.
I'm so
Ever.
sorry.
Huh?
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, I've spoken about this with my husband a lot because, he works with a really great company and I feel like they're very good at that.
Mhm.
Uh, and I'm like, what's that like? Because I've literally never had that. I've never had a good boss model what they truly expected and wanted, from working in the restaurant industry to fitness studios and boutique fitness and all that. It's one of the reasons why I've ventured on my own. And also, I've been in management roles, and I believe that one of the reasons why I thrived doing that, and I got plenty of feedback from my team and teams, was because I had been on their side for so long. And I vowed that if I was ever in a leadership role, that I would be really conscious about how I was modeling for them. And I think I naturally did that based on my own experience. So to dive into that further, basically my experience has been, oh, do as I say, not as I do. And that always bothered me.
Yeah.
And I never thought it was fair. You know, I'm a big fairness person. And I always questioned what they said because I didn't really believe them. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Why you're telling us to do one thing, but you're doing another.
Yeah.
And in a leadership position, you need to be really conscious of that
Yeah.
because you're also not going to keep people if you can't model the right behavior either. So I was expected to lead by modeling, but they weren't.
Yeah.
And it showed, and it showed in the productivity, it showed in the dedication that the team had towards the company. It was reflected, and I kind of became an observer and I saw what was happening. And I was like, well, we all have heard the term, it stems from the top. So
Yeah.
it's, it is important, I think teaching and motivating uh, by oh my gosh, what's the word that I wanted to use? Just teaching and motivating by doing,
Yeah.
right? And your
Absolutely.
actions speak louder than your words. And I think we all know that. But
Yeah.
uh, yeah, those are
Yeah.
my thoughts.
I love that. You brought up something that I hadn't really touched on, but I think it's also such a benefit of being able to model the culture that you want to create is you're also creating trust,
Mm,
right? What I heard you say in there, and I'm thinking back, I've had my handful of horrible bosses. I've also had a handful of incredible managers who were great at modeling what they wanted, or what they expected of the team. And if I think back and I kind of compare those two instances, with the managers that it was more of a do as I say, not as I do, two things really came out of that. First, there was a huge misalignment on the team around expectations. So even though it was very obvious that the manager was not doing what he was asking us to do, um, there there was a lot of gray area. It's like I'm telling you to do this thing, but I'm modeling this thing, which created this gap or this gray area, and so there was lack of alignment. But I think another thing, when I think about someone who was able to really model effectively, it built trust. It didn't only have that alignment factor, which is so incredibly important. Everyone's doing and saying the same thing versus do as I say, but not as I do. Because I think there is something that's cultivated there with like, well, if you want to be at this level, you have to do it the way that I'm doing it, even if that's not being said. And so all of a sudden you have people that are part of the problem, I think, in creating this like hustle culture and
mhm.
people burning out and issues with retainment on the team or retention on the team. Um, so yeah, I love the trust factor though. I do feel like when I think about all of those managers that did model it well, and I'm sure you felt this as a manager who was modeling for their team, not only the alignment and the trust, but also the dedication. You mentioned that, like dedication to the company, dedication to the team. There's like a loyalty factor that comes in when you can see your manager doing the things that they're also inspiring you to do. And there's a trust factor there that's increased. And um, it's so interesting. So
Yeah.
interesting. And it also, I mean, it's motivation, right? We're not always going to be perfect. I saw something bring up Mel Robbins because I know that you love Mel Robbins. You kind
I
of got me
do.
hooked on Mel. Um, but she posted something the other day and she said, I can't stop thinking about something that my friend said. She was talking about having to be the bigger person. And it wasn't directly related to modeling, but she was talking about, I always feel like I have to be the bigger person. And I think this is probably a similar feeling to what you can feel when you're in a leadership role, right? You're always having to take this like higher road, or you're always having to model for your team, even if it's not, you know, it's hard for me to not work on vacation, but modeling that for my team, that was the motivating factor. But one of the things she said was her friend mentioned to her, well, stop being around people that are small, right? Like if you're having to always be the bigger person, look at who you're surrounding yourself with.
Mhm.
When you're looking at your team as a leader, part of that leadership is being able to see the magic of the different team members, see their strengths, and see their strengths as a complement to their weaknesses. I had so many different types of people on my teams when I was in corporate. And so I had to kind of adjust my leadership style for certain people. There were
Yeah.
certain people that I knew for a fact, if I was on vacation and I sent one email or one Slack, I better have communicated already to that person that I was going to be present during this time. Otherwise, they would take it as, well, I need to work more.
Mhm.
Their takeaway from that situation. So
Mhm.
also knowing your team and knowing how they're motivated, they're watching you, whether they seem like it or not. And so, how can you utilize that? How can you utilize the different strengths of your different team members? And also, how can you trust your team members to be able to kind of implement what it is that you're doing and showcasing that for people? I think there's a vulnerability aspect in that as well, of being able to say, hey, this isn't a strength of mine, but this is how I handle it. And there's been so many moments where someone has been able to shift how it is that they work because I was open enough to say, hey, this is really hard for me, but this is what I'm trying to model. Again,
Mhm.
increasing alignment, increasing communication. Um, and it's motivating from a leadership perspective, I think, to know that, hey, you're I almost said your kids or your team are watching what it is that you're doing and how you're doing it, and that's what they're going to learn, that's what they're going to take away, or your actions, not what you're saying necessarily.
Yeah.
That was a rant if I ever heard one.
It was a good rant.
Good.
Uh, I'm gonna ask you a question, and that is, how do you see this relating to how do you see modeling relating to how people end up taking care of themselves?
Oh, yeah, great question. um I think I'm going to relate this first as a parent, and then I'll relate to it as a leader. As a parent, I think when my kids see me taking care of myself, whether it's putting healthy food in my body or moving my body in a certain way, they are then inspired to do it. We talked about this actually earlier today when I was like, it's really adorable when my 4-year-old is like, Mom, I want a set of weights too. I want to work out with you too. It's both really adorable and also really frustrating at the same time.
Totally.
No, no, you can't have my weights. Go away. I'm going to do my
Yeah.
workout. But it's true, right? Like if I just told him, hey, grab a set of weights, we're going to do a workout, he would be like, no, I don't want to do that. But the moment I pick up the weights and I start moving my body in that way, the moment that I'm like, hey, Mom's going to go on a hike, guess everyone wants to go with me. Whereas if I say, hey, let's all go on a hike, everyone's like, oh, I don't want to go on a hike. Right. And so it's like, as you
Interesting.
take action, you get this inspiration from your team members, little humans that are following you, or your actual team, and they want to do it too. Right. Um, I think from a leadership perspective, I find that what's been really helpful for me in the past is getting really clear on the culture that we're creating. What is it that actually promotes the best work possible? How do we do our best work? What does that mean? And how do we actually do it? What are the most important elements of that? And almost having like what I would call a designed alliance with your team,
Mhm.
where it's like these are the expectations, and the reason these are the expectations is because we want to do our best work possible. And then it's a matter of coming back to that. So in moments of conflict, right, how do we want to deal with conflict in a way that helps our team do our best work possible? And then for me, it's modeling that. So that could even be role modeling in the moment of, hey, let's use an example. So last week we had this situation with a peer team or a cross functional team, and this was the conflict. in this way, this is how we could deal with this to have a really positive outcome. So it's like role modeling it in the moment and then even sharing it, right? So having a moment, one thing that I really utilized, I think, as a leader is using examples. So if I'm working with a team, or even now, like if I'm going in and working with a corporate team, understand, like giving an example of this is how this worked in the past. Now let's take this example and apply what you currently do, how you currently handle it, and then let's apply this new way that we want to handle it. And so even though you're not modeling it in the moment, you're role modeling, you're using that example to kind of role model what it could look like. And I think it's helpful for people when they see that. It's the same concept when you're in a workout class and the person is like, hey, lower your shoulders, lower your shoulders, lower your shoulders. This is always my issue, is I end up with my shoulders next to my ears. And it's not until I can look at the person and follow what they're doing, right? So like you and I have done this, where then all of a sudden, if I can see the visual of it, then I almost can internalize how I need to be doing it. And then I can feel it in my own body and I can move forward. So, similarly, walking your team through especially difficult situations like that, modeling for them how to actually handle it. If you can do that in front of your team or share an example of a moment when you have done that, it's a lot easier for someone to go, oh, I can do that. I know what that feels like. I know how that sounds. I know what that looks like. And then they can go ahead and do it as well. So, yeah, I think in both instances, it's being on board before asking your team to be on board. There's something that's really motivating and inspiring about that, saying, hey, I'm going to go on a hike, or saying, hey, I'm going to go on this vacation and I'm really going to work on disconnecting. So here's the expectations while I'm out. Um, or, hey, this is a really difficult situation. This is how, I would handle this situation. And then showcasing that to your team. Even if it is something where you can't CC them on the email, coming back to your team in that safe space and saying, hey, remember that instance? This is how I handled it. This was the outcome. It's a lot more inspiring than just kind of going through work, but just being mindful that your actions really do have an impact on how your team is going to then act.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you for sharing all that.
Of course. Of course.
I guess I would respond kind of in the way that it relates to what I do. I see a lot of, CEOs who, are burning themselves into the ground. And once they start incorporating some of these healthier choices and these healthier actions,
Mhm.
it filters down into wanting to share that with their team. And just there is a crossover in how you approach, um, taking care of yourself. I think impressions are a lot. Everyone's looking at you, so if they see you dragging your feet in the morning with no energy, but yet you stayed up all night working on something, like your team is going to do that too.
Yeah.
So I think it's also important to kind of align with what you really want for yourself and what you want for your business, and then align that with how you're going to get your team to jump on board with you. So a
Yeah.
lot of times I spend a lot of time working with the executive team and the corporate sector, and then once they kind of have some of these basics down in their lives, things their culture starts to change in their business, and it's really interesting to see. Like, it could be as simple as the snacks they end up providing in the office if people are going into the office these days, and providing some of those options, and you know, again, kind of leading by that that modeling. I think it's really important.
Absolutely. And even like celebrating I think it's, we celebrate at work, we celebrate work achievements, right? Or at least hopefully we do. If you're not celebrating work achievements, have a think about that. But also, one thing at Airbnb, I remember we actually had challenges. we had these like, they were like health challenges. And for a while, my entire team would leave the office during our lunch break and we would go work out. And we would all do different things. Some people would go to a yoga class, some people would go, um, do something else, go to the gym. But we had number of minutes that we had worked out and we kept it on a leadership, on a little board in the office. And then we celebrated those achievements. So
Mm.
I had one employee who, she's a runner. I am not a runner. It's not my favorite thing, but she is an amazing runner. And during this kind of health challenge, she was like, I think I want to train for a half marathon. And I was like, you should do it. Well, when she ended up running her half marathon, we had a little party for her in the office. And it wasn't massive. It wasn't this big thing that took hours away from work. It was a small moment, right, of celebration. But celebrating the whole human that comes to work, and that includes the health, oh, you had a child, right? Like there's so many other things that we can celebrate with the humans that we work with. And I think people shy away from that sometimes at work. But I found that that also really helped to motivate kind of the health and well-being of the team overall. Was we all kind of knew, we knew what everyone was working on. Everyone had kind of passion projects and ways in which that they were keeping themselves healthy. We did not always have healthy snacks at Airbnb. We got there eventually, but for a while it was like chips and chocolate. That's what you could find in the break room, and lots of different types of chips and chocolate and everything else that you can imagine. But we would start to kind of keep each other accountable. And so for a while I had a coworker, and anytime we got chips was like my downfall. When I worked at Airbnb, it was my like salty snack, salty crunchy snack, that like got me through the afternoon. And we started doing this thing where if you get a small bowl of chips, you have to eat it with chopsticks, because one of my coworkers would always eat her chips with chopsticks. She didn't like
That's
to,
weird.
yeah, she didn't like to get her hands like greasy or whatever.
Interesting. Okay, I've never heard that before.
But when you eat with chopsticks, you eat slower. You're also
Yeah.
being mindful of every single chip that you can't like take a bunch of chips and shove them in your mouth when you have chopsticks, right? So that was kind of the joke, was like, well, if you get a bowl of chips, you got to get some chopsticks
Oh,
to
that's so
it.
silly.
And it was really silly, but it made it, I don't know, it was fun. And it was,
Really? See,
yeah.
I find that torture.
Oh,
I find that to be not fun at all. That
it
brings me back to my, like, ballerina days where it's like, "Let's go get lunch during our 8-hour rehearsal and compete and see who cannot eat their food."
oh, yeah,
Stuff
no.
like that. Like,
This
so to me, that kinda chopstick thing doesn't work.
Yeah, this was just with chips, because
I
it
get
was
it.
massive. We were eating the trust and safety team was eating all of the chips.
Got
Let's
it.
put it that way. So it definitely hindered our anytime we'd go to the little spot to get chips, it was like, no, I don't want to eat this with goddamn chopsticks. And so instead of getting chips, we'd get, trail mix or something.
Okay.
But it was no,
Anyway.
it was fun. Um, it was kind of like
Okay.
a thing.
Oh,
But
that's funny.
even down to, like, eating at your desk, right? Like, I was so known for that at Airbnb. It was like I'd get food, and then I'd take my lunch break at my desk while I was eating. And all of a sudden, my whole team was doing the same thing, and then by the end of the day, everyone was stressed out, kinda snappy at each other.
Mhm.
Was like, no, no, we actually need to do something about this. So that's where the working out during the lunch break came from. And it was like, you don't have to work out if you don't want to work out during this time. If you have a workout in the morning or in the evenings that you do, that's totally fine. But you cannot work at your desk during a lunch break. That's not considered a break. And so we had to really make the statement, and then I had to follow through with it. And that was, I think, the hardest part. Was I knew that was going to be beneficial for the team, but when was I going to do all of those other things that I felt like I had to get done? And so I had to kind of restructure and reprioritize my day. But I do find that when I take that space, that was also really hard when I started my own business. I have nobody here to model for when I'm in my 8 by 10 office shed in my backyard. And so who's going to know if I get my lunch and I come and eat it at my computer? But I'm very mindful of the fact that the days that I do that, I end up spinning my wheels a little bit more. I get less done. I'm not as productive. I'm not as focused. I usually leave work feeling like, oh, now I need to run and go pick up my kids. And then I have to make dinner. And then I have to do this. And then I have to do this. And I'm kind of going 100 miles a minute. And so, having the motivation, I don't have a team that I'm reflecting on here necessarily. And so having the motivation to be able to take those breaks and seeing the difference in my own energy level, um, it's been really important. And it ends up helping me better model for my kids at the end of the day. Because if they
Yeah.
get home and I haven't taken my breaks and I haven't moved my body and I haven't put healthy food in my body, by the end of the day, I don't have any more energy to model what I want to model for my kids.
Mhm. We
And
all
so,
get to that point. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it makes it a lot harder. Um, I definitely feel like when I think about modeling, and it comes up in so many different ways, right? But I love the way that, like, for example, when you work, and I know this just because I've been your client, but and this is the area that I get to model in as well, is when I'm working with clients. I get to model how to communicate and how to show up. And and I guess that happens online as well. If I'm emailing at 9 p.m. at night, but I'm, touting to my clients, hey, at 9 p.m. at night, yeah, of course, there might be an exception here or there, but that shouldn't be the theme that you're always working at 9 p.m. at night. But then if they get an email from me at 9 p.m. at night, I'm not really modeling that, right? So, but I feel like you do this really well. And it comes up for me as a client of yours where um, you'll send me a message and you're out on your walk while you're sending me a message. And we use Marco Polo, so I'm able to see,
I love
right?
Marco Polo.
I love it too. And you're sending me a message and about my workouts for the week or about whatever it might be. We've even done this when we're in the middle of coaching and you'll tell me, hey, I'm making myself lunch right now. And then you'll tell me exactly what it is that you're making. And I think it helps me because I get into my own rut of kind of what I eat and then it becomes a routine. Um, and so when you are able to kind of show up and model, this is what I'm eating. You're the health coach, right? And
Mhm.
when you say, oh, well, I'm making scrambled eggs and I like to put it on a bed of spinach, I'm like, oh, I'm going to try that. And then the next day, that's what I have for breakfast. And then usually for the next 6 weeks, I like
Ah.
that until there's something new that piques my interest. But I find that it's so helpful in so many different aspects where I'm seeing you do the things that you're promoting for me as a client. And it increases inspiration and motivation to also do those things. And so I think it's just such a helpful, whether it's one on one, whether you have a whole team that you're modeling for, maybe a whole organization, your clients, whoever it is, I think it's so incredibly important to, do what it is that you're preaching. It's not,
Mhm.
you can't just say, do it this way and then do something completely different.
Well, one, I appreciate you recognizing that. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Uh, I think that's an important takeaway for people
Hmm.
uh, is that whatever expert they're going to, let's just use health, nutrition, and fitness.
Yeah.
It is important that they are practicing what they preach.
Hmm.
Uh, because again, it builds trust factor. And also, you know, if that's what you want to emulate and that's what you have a goals in mind to reach,
Yeah.
you want to emulate the behavior that someone who's maybe already gotten there has done and is doing.
Absolutely.
Uh, I think it's so interesting that you say that, because I, of course, at times find myself like, oh my God, it's this time and I haven't eaten lunch.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons why I do that. And I think it's nice to hear that you've received it that way. I hope other clients have as well. But
Yeah.
it's also a way for people to see that, you know what, it is important to make yourself some real food and you can still have a conversation while you do it.
Yep.
And that's human, and I mean, I know everyone's job is different, and that might not be possible for everybody to do that
Yeah,
specific scenario. But, you know, take that and incorporate it how you think it fits in your life. But,
yeah,
uh, it's always a moment of like, I'm too busy to eat, but I have to eat.
yeah,
So I'm going to do this regardless of what this person thinks of me. Again, I understand that there are certain roles that you might not be able to do that in. But
yeah,
if you find yourself having that moment of like, I'm starving and I haven't had time to eat, which is one of the most popular things I hear, it's like, okay, well, do I have 10 minutes before this meeting to do something really quick? I for those that know me, they know I don't like cooking, so everything I do has to be 15 minutes or less.
yep,
Um, so, you can do it. It just takes some conscious effort. Um, but yeah, I guess I do that. It's interesting to hear you say that because most of the time it comes from me not having time to do things.
yeah,
But, I guess I have the luxury with my business to be like, "Oh, I guess I am killing 2 birds with 1 stone here, and I can, do that." But
yeah.
yeah.
I You bring up another really good point that I think is so helpful around modeling because we've talked about this concept before where leaders can oftentimes feel like they have to be perfect or they have to do everything the right way. And I think another thing that you can do in modeling, we're all human, right? We're all going to forget to eat until noon or whatever it is, right? Like we're not going to do everything perfectly. We're not going to be able to model perfectly 100% of the time, and that's okay. I think the shift there is being okay with saying, "Hey, I didn't do this the best way possible," or "Hey, I wasn't able to get my food in this morning, and so while we're having this conversation, I am eating my lunch," or whatever it is. Communicating it instead of it being, because I think that it's so easy. We assume every single day. We take in information, and our brain in effort to be efficient assumes things, right? And so if you were just eating during a call, my brain might just automatically assume, oh, she never actually takes breaks. She just eats her lunch during her calls, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Instead of assuming that, you headed it off at the pass by saying, hey, today was a busy morning. I didn't get my food in. But by the way, this is what I'm making. This is a great option. You can make it in 5 minutes. It's super healthy. Protein, this and this and this. All you need are these ingredients. And all of a sudden I'm over here and I'm like, oh yeah, let me write all those things down tomorrow.
I love it.
It's that same concept, right? And so being okay with not being perfect, no one is perfect. And so even in those moments where you're maybe not modeling something that you want to model, or maybe it could be construed in different ways, um, communicating, like showing up and saying, this is how I'm doing. It's the same concept of when I was working kind of in the evenings. Hey, you might get an email from me from this time to this time because I'm off during these 2 hours for kid pickup, dinner routine, whatever it is. So communication is huge and so key when it comes to you can't just model the behavior. You also have to kind of communicate what it is
Mhm,
you're trying to model. And if you fall off or if you don't model something perfectly, being able to come back and say, hey, I didn't model this in the way that I'd like to model it. Here's how I'd like to model it. Right. And that gives that other person, number one, the opportunity to go, oh, I'm not perfect. She's not perfect. I don't always have to be perfect. And here's the difference between this option and this option.
mhm.
Um, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I think this was a really interesting topic.
It's an interesting topic. It's a good
Yeah.
one.
I think a lot of people are on vacation.
Yes, I think so too. It's a quiet day today.
Yeah, that's okay. We can talk for hours.
Yes, we can. Um,
So I think we're hitting time, so let's wrap up. We like to end with the takeaways from today. Kiki, what do you think the biggest takeaway is of today?
I think that we need to throw away. the term do as I say, not as I do. I think if you really want to influence and impact your team, and your team can be anything, right? So it can be your family unit, it can be your organization, it can be your business, it can be your team that you're leading. If you really want that team to take away and make some shifts or changes in how they work, how they communicate, how they show up, it all starts with you as a leader.
I love that.
Um, let's see. What else? I think I love the fact that communication goes hand in hand with modeling behavior.
I think
Um,
that's a good one too.
yeah. And it really does. It builds trust. It builds trust. It builds alignment. Um, and I think it really can help with the loyalty or the team bonding of the group, the connection of the group when you're all kind of set on a specific way of working and you're all showing up trying to model that not only for each other but also for the broader organization.
I love that in terms of leadership for you and in terms of health and improving one's health. I think through modeling, I think, yeah, aligning yourself with what you really want to feel like and what is optimal for you, what is optimal energy, like defining that and then making the time to get there
Yeah.
is really, really important because then that will filter down to teams.
And isn't that
And
beautiful? Like we try so much to influence everyone else, whether it's our team,
Mhm.
kids or our families. And instead of worrying about everyone else, focus on yourself. What do you want? What how do you want to show up? How do you want to feel? And then focusing on doing that for you, and the impact is like a ripple effect. And so it's actually, I think, probably less um it's a lot easier to, when you're modeling something for your team, to get everyone to kind of get on that boat versus trying to convince or motivate people to do it when you're not doing it yourself. So asking that question, what do I want to model? How do I want to feel? How do I want to show up? And what am I modeling? Am I modeling that for my team? And starting with yourself, what is it that I need to be doing? What shifts do I need to make to really model that for the team? And it's a positive ripple effect.
Awesome.
Amazing. Thank you for chatting today.
Thank you. And do you have anything you want to share with people to um, hop on your email list, or you have anything new coming out?
I do have, so yes, definitely hop on let me know if you want to get on my newsletter list. Hopefully by next week, I'll have a nice little QR code that you can scan to get on there. And I know that we actually have some exciting things coming up. So come to our next LinkedIn Lives. We'll start talking a little bit about some really exciting opportunities. So both a mastermind that will be coming up, and then also our next annual retreat that we are planning, which will be really fun. So keep an eye out for some polls and as we continue to put those things together, and definitely let us know if there's anything in particular that you're interested in us touching in terms of topics. We're here every Thursday.
Yeah, awesome.
What about
And for those who want to learn more about me, you can hop on my email list. Uh, Website's right there. Go ahead and jump on news, updates, tips, tricks. I also have an action toolbox for people to get started. You can just scan that. And these are the tools that will help you start making healthier choices and start modeling that kind of behavior. So it's a great little toolbox, and that is it on my end. So
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much.
yeah, thanks, Kiki.
Of course.
Always lovely to see you.
Always lovely to see you.
And until next week,
All right. Bye, y'all.
bye.